Hello, this is my first video in a while. I'm actually at work, but I decided to fuck with it. I was gonna show you all my Spider-Man stuff before, a little intro, but here is the video title. How to fix Spider-Man. So we're gonna talk about the MCU Spider-Man and how, well, it needs a lot of damn fixing, and I think I can fix it. As you can see, I have Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee from the amazing Into the Spider-Verse movie, which is a movie that understands Spider-Man more than, well, the MCU does. So here we go. Here is how to fix Spider-Man. I'm actually at work, so I'm not not doing work, trying to get fired. No, I'm actually on break. It's lunch. It's about 11:55, so I still got a little bit less than an hour. But number one is bring back the responsibility. So let's go over this a little bit. So Peter Parker is defined as a character who is full of responsibilities, plural. So, there's, of course, the great power, with great power comes great responsibility quote from Uncle Ben, which of course Uncle Ben, we'll get to him later. But Spider-Man as a character is defined by three major things. One, he is an everyman. Everyone can see themselves in the mask of Spider-Man. Number two, he can't catch a break. His life kind of sucks. And number three, he has a lot of responsibility. A lot of things on his shoulders. He has the world on his shoulders. So we're going to do that. Number one, this Spider-Man is not mature enough for viewers. He's not able to see the world through a mature point of view. This Spider-Man needs to be able to be responsible for the actions that he does. This Spider-Man has no consequences. For example, in 2017's John Watts' amazing Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man decides to, go after a couple punks dressed up as Avengers, and he ends up resulting in the explosion of a man's livelihood, a shop that he was previously talking to and he's kind of friends with. No consequences. Nobody's hurt. Nothing. There's no consequences. There's no consequence to any of the MCU Spider-Man films, which is a travesty. A freaking travesty. Spider-Man is defined by responsibility, and I think every Spider-Man movie, in comic, and video game, and whatever, should have Spider-Man and Peter Parker being a responsible person. He's defined by this. Because when he wasn't responsible, his father figure, Uncle Ben, died. So he learned from that, and from that he became Spider-Man. It's essential. Make the character have consequences for his action, and let him learn from those consequences to become a better Spider-Man. Number two, stop with the Tony Stark bullshit. I get it. Tony Stark, Iron Man, has become a very popular character because of the MCU movies. Robert Downey Jr. does a great job, but Spider-Man is an Iron Boy. He's not Iron Man Jr. He's not Spider-Boy. He's not Iron Boy. Spider-Man is his own man. Originally in the comics, Spider-Man wasn't inspired by Iron Man or anything like that. Spider-Man was his own hero who had to deal with his own things. While the Avengers were protecting the skies, Spider-Man was protecting the people on the streets. He was a low-level superhero that dealt with pretty big things. So bring that back. We don't need the Tony Stark bullshit. It makes you think that Tony Stark is more important to Peter Parker than Uncle Ben ever was. I will cite Hitop Films, which is a great inspiration of me to make this video. Shout out to Hitop's Films, one of the best YouTube channels ever made, and an upcoming writer like myself. Great guy. I would love to talk to him one day. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is this Spider-Man needs to be on his own, needs to learn to be a solo hero. He can't just rely on the Avengers and, of course, Tony Stark. He has to go out on his own and find his own wing. They tried to do this twice. Once in Homecoming and once in Far From Home. Once in Homecoming, he's trying to do his own thing when he gets the suit taken away. And then in Far From Home, it gets ruined because Happy says, "You're never going to be Tony." And that was okay, they're trying to do something. They're trying to do what we want. And then they play the fucking AC/DC music and have him act like Tony Stark. He's not Tony Stark. And a kind of mini point is, stop with the tech. Spider-Man makes his own tech, and even then, he's not a tech-heavy hero. He relies on his wits and his powers and his willpower. Come on. Spider-Man doesn't need drones. Spider-Man doesn't need this high-tech suit that does everything for him. He's a creative individual. Peter Parker is a smart guy. He can figure it out on his own. He doesn't need all this bullshit like Tony Stark does. Point number 3. Mention Uncle Ben. Now, they sort of mention Uncle Ben when they have the little briefcase, the little suitcase that has the initials of Ben Parker, but doesn't count. You see, it's important for them to mention Uncle Ben. You don't have to show the death of Uncle Ben, obviously. This isn't an origin-heavy Spider-Man. But you at least have to acknowledge the most important person in Spider-Man's life. Ben Parker, Uncle Ben, is the most important person in Spider-Man's life. Second would be Aunt May. Okay? Ben Parker and May Parker took Peter Parker in after, there's many different ways in the comics of how his parents disappeared, they're S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, whatever. But the thing is, they took him in and gave him a great moral compass and raised him in a great environment. And that turned him into Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. That quote defines Spider-Man. And that quote is Ben Parker's. You at least have to mention him and have a talk like with Aunt May and him and like, we really miss Ben and you're making Ben proud. Ben would be really proud of what you're doing. Every Spider-Man thing does that. Every Spider-Man thing does that, And it's pathetic that they can't even mention the damn guy, the old man. It's quite insulting, actually. But yes, they have to mention Uncle Ben. It's essential to the Spider-Man lore and character. Point number 4. Fix the supporting cast. Now, this might get a little hate because people love Ned and all these different characters. Well, guess what? They're not really Spider-Man supporting cast. There's no Harry, there's no Gwen, there's no real MJ, there's no J. Jonah Jameson, Robbie Robinson, there's nobody like that. There's not really a real Aunt May. She's too young. The supporting cast is all over the place. It's kind of pathetic. Like, Ned is annoying. This new MJ, they don't have any they do have chemistry, but it comes out of nowhere. Like, it's a pretty shitty relationship because he just comes into Far From Home automatically loving Michelle, and it makes no sense whatsoever. Terrible character development. Soft reboot maybe. Introduce Harry Osborn, Gwen Stacy, people like that. Introduce more characters. Betty Brant isn't Betty Brant. Flash Thompson, oh my gosh, this kid could never become Agent Venom. This supporting cast is just underdeveloped Disney teenagers, and I kind of hate it. Point number 5, introduce Norman Osborn and Harry Osborn, but mainly Norman Osborn. You see, Norman Osborn is the Joker to Peter Parker's Batman, is the Lex Luthor to Peter Parker's Superman. He is the ultimate threat, the ultimate nemesis of Peter Parker. Not only is he the father of Peter Parker's best friend, and that's great for drama, human drama, but he has played a part in some of the worst moments of Spider-Man's life, and some of the biggest triumphant moments of Spider-Man's life. They both are wicked enemies, and their dialogue and their struggles together are pretty great. They're a great dynamic between them. Just like Batman and the Joker, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin have a great dynamic, a great hero-villain dynamic. I know we explored this in the first Spider-Man movie, and Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe did a great job, but make it different, Norman Osborn. Not only that, but Norman Osborn can play to the bigger Marvel Universe with the Dark Avengers, Reign, the aftermath of Secret Invasion if they ever do that. He could play a bigger role and kind of become the super villain, the main villain of the Marvel Universe for a while. With Norman Osborn, the possibilities are endless. Eventually you can make, Harry the Goblin again. You could have the Hobgoblin come in. There's so many possibilities with having the Green Goblin, Norman Osborn. He doesn't have to be Green Goblin the first film, but you could build it up over a couple films and make him the Green Goblin. I think that would be great. Point number 6, give him the problems of Spider-Man. Now, this Spider-Man is handed everything. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is given everything. I mean, everything that Tony Stark gives him. He's automatically an Avenger. Everything. Obviously he has no consequences, and he has no problems. He's never gonna have money problems. Automatically gets all the girls, so he's gonna have no girl problems. He seems to be fitting in with the lifestyle of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and of course the ending of Far From Home kind of screws that up, doesn't it? But yeah, he has problems. He has problems with his self-worth, but he always gets back up. That's the thing about Spider-Man, he always gets back up. But this Spider-Man never gets down. He just is always getting help. There's no problems. There's no struggle. Spider-Man is all about the struggle of life, but he always gets back up. And that's the beauty of it. He's everyman. We can relate to him because he has problems like the rest of us. Financial problems, life problems, girl problems, everything. He's like us, man. And they don't realize that because they want you just to have fun. They don't want you to feel something when they make the movie. They just want Spider-Man to be fun. And that's a crime. Spider-Man is more than a fun hero. He's a very dynamic hero. Last but not least is my little theory that could fix everything. Now, what if I told you that the Tom Holland Spider-Man is a clone, Ben Reilly? That the original Spider-Man is out fighting crime in secret, and that he wasn't snapped. He fought crime while nobody else was during the 5 years in between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Wouldn't that be something? Maybe not even a clone. Maybe this Spider-Man is a Skrull who just adopted the identity of Peter Parker. And the real Spider-Man has all the responsibility, all the characteristics that we come to love about Spider-Man. And he comes in and he mentors Ben Reilly, Tom Holland Spider-Man. I mean, that could be an interesting thing. This is just a theory. This is just a kind of new idea I sparked in my head. But just think about it. The real Spider-Man could be out there, really helping the world, while this Spider-Man is just trying to show off. So that's the end of my video. I really hope you guys enjoy it. More to come. Love you guys.